What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So this is the second part of that 350 build, and we're going to discuss cylinder wall corrosion and pitting, and why you know, the consequences of that, why you really should have your engine bored. And I guess the questions would be like, you know, is it going to run? Yeah. Is it going to run good? Yeah, probably. It'll probably still run good. Is it going to use oil? Yeah. Is it going to foul out plugs? Probably. We'll probably use a heavier weight oil like a 2050 on this motor to try to mitigate some of that. We run into some problems with the cylinder bores being corroded and pitted, and he's not wanting to bore it. We're going to put it back together anyway because this is what he wants to do. It's going to be supposed to last a year or two, maybe. I think it'll be fine for that. It's just going to consume oil. And then eventually we're going to build this into a 383 with an all fresh bore, crank, rods, and everything. So I guess this is literally what it is, a means to an end engine. But when it comes to this, guys, I would always advise you to get this thing knocked out, bored, and put some new pistons in it, because there's just this right here. It breaks my heart to put a motor together like this, but at the end of the day, necessity drives, you know, this. So we have to do it, you know, to get things moving for him. But anyway, guys, we'll do with the rest of the build, and we'll talk about the cam specs and stuff, and we'll see you then. All right, guys, so we've got all the pistons in, got it on TDC. When you're doing a small block Chevy, you need to make sure, this has got actually a real nice timing chain gear on it. Double roller with the 4-degree advance and retard. That's pretty cool. But what you just got to remember is the dot to dot to make sure that the timing is lined up dead center with number one. Now, I've already checked this thing. This camshaft is supposed to be on 109 degrees of lobe separate, or intake center line, excuse me, intake center line 109. So we checked that, it's about 108, so that's pretty good. And this thing has got a 114 degrees of lobe separation angle. So it does pretty, it's pretty much on the money. It's installed pretty good. So that, like I said, this is what it looks like with the cylinders. I mean, I'm scared to death of it. But we're gonna roll with it. I cleaned everything up as best I could. So we're gonna put the heads on it, and I'll show you my special way of adjusting the valves on this rig. All right, guys, so we've got the bolt sequence, we've got the head on, we've got all the fasteners in. Now there's a thing about small block Chevys that every single one of these bolts goes into a water jacket. So what we need to do, what I did was I put some RTV on the threads of every single bolt, you know, and I run them down with the impact, just enough to get them down. I didn't even put any torque on them. So I'll torque them right here in a minute in this sequence right here. Into 3 different steps. You do the 3 different steps to stretch the bolts, and then you do one step at, like, I think it's 45, then the next one at, say, 65, and then the final torque. So anyway, guys, check it out. All right, guys, the way we're gonna adjust these valves. Now, this is a hydraulic flat tappet camshaft, so I do it a little bit different than everybody else. And this is a surefire 100% way. I've done it for years. It works every time. So when you're in here, you're spinning this push rod. You're tightening this nut down. You wanna turn this rod until you get the slightest drag on the rod, not until it stops, until you feel a drag. All right, that's at 0 lash. So you go along all of these and you turn them all until you get 0 lash, till you get just a slight drag on the rod. Come down here to your crank, turn that bad boy 90 degrees. Come up here, adjust them again, and do it again. 90 degrees, adjust every one of them again. Get all the lash out. You turn this thing 90 degrees until you turn it about 4 or 5 times, and then you'll have every lash of every cylinder done. That way you don't have to worry about which cylinder you're on. You can just kind of go back, twist the rod, and if it's got a slight drag on it, then you got 0 lash out. If it's loose, you tighten it down until you get that little slight drag. Come down here to the crank, turn it 90 degrees. After you rotate the engine 2 times or so, you'll have every valve adjusted. And then you come here to the nut and you crank it a half a turn extra, and you're ready to rock and roll. I also put these lifters in dry, that way you don't have any variant. I know a lot of people say you need to soak them overnight. That's not true, because when you go to put your oil pressure, you go turn your oil pump and you start putting priming this engine, these lifters will fill up with oil. So first crank, you won't have no problems, and you don't have to worry about bending any push rods or anything. All right, so we got this thing buttoned up. We got the intake on it. We tried to prime it, but this hole right here is exposed. It won't hold the pressure. So we'll prime it when it gets in the truck. But we got it all together. She's ready to go. Sean's gonna take her home, put some paint on it, call it good. So mission accomplished. About 10 quarts of oil later, thing might be ready to rock. All right, guys, so we got that motor built, that 350. We dropped it off at Sean's house. I actually was showing him how to adjust the valves. He's never adjusted hydraulic flat tappet or hydraulic lifters ever. And so we gave him let him adjust his own valves on that rig. We got it put together. We had a long discussion about how he needs to try to treat this motor for a while. Not to put too much stock into it, to just treat it really well, change the oil, and try to check it every week and see what kind of oil it's burning, to see if it's smoking or anything. Didn't really check the heads. I checked the valve springs to make sure they were all clean, and the valve seals and everything looked pretty good. The camshaft, I was going to put the specs up, but guys, I got carried away and I forgot. But anyway, the camshaft was a Jegs grind, actually. One of their more economy grind. I think it was like $215 shipped with the lifters. And it was a 234 degrees at 50 on the intake and exhaust, and 488 lift between the intake and exhaust. And it had a 109 degree intake center line on the intake and a 119 degree intake or exhaust center line on the exhaust side, for a total of 114 lobe separation angle. The timing events were about what was good for a motor cam. And I told Sean I was a little worried about the 114 lobe separation angle because about how far up the RPM band it makes the torque. But, being it's not such a big cam, he's not really worried about it. He's going to put a stock converter back in the 700 R4 he's going to put behind it. So I'm not really that worried about the camshaft specs as much as he just wants to have a little bit of chop to it. And I think it'll chop, pretty good for a little cam like it is. It doesn't have 488 lift, and the stock valve springs are plenty of valve spring for it. I mean, it's on a little teetering edge of what the stock valve springs can handle, but it'll be fine. I checked the coil bind; it was doing fine. So we primed the motor. I told him to run a 20W50 oil in it to try the thicker oil maybe would help keep some of that wore cylinder walls. Man, that broke my heart real bad. But at the end of the day, this is what he needed to do, and we didn't have much choice. We put the intake on it. We let it ride, so it is what it is. I think it'll turn out being a good motor for him. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. I try to get as much video as possible, but we did so much work. I was trying to crunch. I had my son this weekend, so we were crunching for time, and we had to do stuff in between. So I hope you guys can forgive me from, you know, the kind of spastic setup on the video camera, but I did the best I could. I hope you guys enjoy, and we'll talk to you next time.